In 1974, the first tabletop role-playing game was created. Since then, people from all around have gathered to play. Join me as we talk with RPG enthusiasts while they share their best, worst, and favorite moments. This is You Had to Be There.
Hey everyone, welcome to You Had to Be There, a D&D storytelling podcast. My guest today, we're probably going to be talking a bit more Pathfinder today, but as you know, that's what we do. We don't discriminate against different systems. Give it up, everybody, for Gary Engler. What's going on, man?
How you doing? Thanks for having me.
Yeah, of course. So you said you play mostly Pathfinder now. What other systems do you play? Other systems right now, or is it mostly Pathfinder?
So right now we're pretty much splitting between Pathfinder 1, which we've been playing for 8 years, maybe, somewhere around there. We're also been playing some Pathfinder 2, which recently came out, and we're expanding into that. And we actually are in the beginning phases of a City of Mist campaign.
Yeah, very cool.
So we're just in the process of like, okay, how does this work now?
Yeah,
and
I'm excited.
That step.
I'm gonna have Ken back on after you guys finish that, because we have a couple past guests kind of joining on. Our family it's finally happening. I've been like, we have our Discord, and the whole purpose is to like be able to do that, and just, because sometimes just things fall off for a while and you just want to do a couple quick hits, and it's a struggle sometimes. So I feel like having that resource to be like, what, I'm by myself all night on Friday night. Anyone want to do something? So I think it's a cool little system we have. So I'm happy that you're joining in on that. Did you start off doing Pathfinder, or did you start with traditional D&D?
We started off with AD&D, like first edition.
AD&D.
Maybe about 7-8 years ago. A buddy of ours we knew from the bar around Stevens, where I went to school. We would meet him at the bar, and he's like, "Oh yeah, I played this, I GM'd this a bunch, and blah blah blah." And we get into it. Finally, like, let's do this.
Yeah.
What's Stacko?
Yeah.
So it was that whole thing. It was chaos. Let's go.
Yeah, and I think when I had Ken on, he was like my third episode. He talked about this crazy guy at the bar that was just so. It's cool to hear that story definitely aligns. And so yeah, so it wasn't really what you expected it to be then in the beginning.
I don't know what I expected. What it really turned into, and I think the reason why I really started to like it, it was a group of friends. We would sit around, we'd get drunk, and we'd have this collective storytelling aspect of it. Sort of sitting in the math department, and John was just really good at sort of rolling with the punches and sort of turning things up. So that was a lot of fun.
Yeah, Drunks and Dragons can get a little tough sometimes. I've experienced. I've had a DM totally just. He like 2 days later he was like, okay, what happened? I was like, good thing right before we started you made me the lore master, and I like ran through everything, and he's like, well, that's not right at all according to the module, but we're just gonna keep it. And yeah, so that's always a good time. So then when you started Pathfinder, was that also with like the same group? Have you been mostly playing with the same group?
So mostly the same group. We moved over to Pathfinder because a friend of ours, Juan, he was really big into 3.5 and everything. So he's like, "Oh, let's play Pathfinder," and we're like, "What is this?"
Yeah.
So we started with it, and I kind of feel bad for him because, he basically played with a group of mathematicians, and we're all like, "Okay, what's the rule system? How can we screw with it?"
Right, yeah.
So basically, like, it was a bunch of people like, okay, we're going to memorize the rules. We found all the online resources, which Pathfinder's fantastic for.
Right.
And we sort of ran off with it. So we did that for a bunch. I think he either got sick of us or he had some... Yeah, actually, no, fairness, he had a bunch of work stuff come up. And so that's when we started pivoting into, like, I would GM and other people would GM and sort of went with that.
Do you prefer GMing, running games, or do you prefer playing?
Uh, it depends on what day it is. There are times where like I'll GM for a while and I love it. Then it's like, okay, I'm gonna step back from this. And there are times where I'm like, no, I love GMing. I love the storytelling. I have this own campaign setting that I've sort of built out and worked building the lore around it that I enjoy revisiting from time to time.
Yeah, that's awesome. What's your world like?
So the campaign basically started around this idea that take like your usual like run of the mill fantasy world that the campaigns kind of go in. They thought their world was basically the only part of the material plane that people lived on, but it's not. And so
Okay.
aliens come down one day with this big ship that sort of descends out of the heavens, and they've seen Ghostbusters. So when people ask you if you're a god, you say yes.
Right.
So basically, there's this 7-year period where the Arrived, which is this new pantheon that showed up, is sort of doing something behind the scenes. And the campaign started at sort of what I call the Fall of the Arrived, where there's this sudden event, because I'm terrible at naming things. There's a sudden event that happens where basically the Silver City, which is their main city, explodes, and all of a sudden people realize they're not gods. So the campaign's sort of taking place in the fallout of the realization that there are these aliens. They're not gods, they're aliens, and sort of like the political and chaos that's going on around that.
So basically, it was this big eye-opening moment where they're like, "Oh shit, we're invaded." Kind of.
Yes, maybe not like technically, maybe not like wholly invaded, like they're coming out of nowhere, but like they were lying to us and sort of what was their goals. And now there are new like aliens coming down, so they're dealing with, okay, they're not gods. What are they trying to do? And sort of all these different factions that crop up.
The word is out for the. Is it like more space themed, or is it more still medieval type themed?
More traditional medieval type themed, just with like. So now, like, there's technology around, but unless you really study everything, you have no idea what it is.
Right.
So it's like all these interactions and everything with that. So
that's awesome. That's a fun twist on the story. And I'm sure there's like a lot to uncover about whatever these like creatures were doing all this time, that they were like, we're your gods, and the world believed them.
There's a whole bunch of plot hooks around that I'm hoping that the party eventually picks up on.
Yeah, that's always my fear of like, I've been the player of someone where I'm like, after a while, I'm like, I pick up the whoever's running the game, like, oh, I get it. You created this and you really want this to happen, and we're not doing it, and then we're like, oh, I guess we're gonna go this way. But it can go either way.
Yeah, I have a bunch of like one shots that are split across different times of around this time period.
Cool.
Just basically so like if they don't do something, I can just throw them in one shot and I can get some exposition that way. And I'm using this system to World Anvil that I'm basically using to sort of do the timeline of everything that they're doing, because they've done crazy stuff and sort of building off that.
And then is this one in Pathfinder 2 or Pathfinder 1?
Pathfinder 1.
Pathfinder 1. All right. I haven't really like done too much. What's the major differences between the two, other than, is it just different classes and stuff, or mathematically is it the same?
No. It's a departure. Pathfinder 1, people call it like Mathfinder. There's all part of the reason I think I like it. Yeah. So there's all these different rules and everything around it, and it's a lot of rules. It's been around for a long time, and it started off almost like word for word 3.5, or not word for word, but very very resembling to it. So it's built off of that. Pathfinder 2 is trying to simplify it a bunch.
Yeah.
It doesn't have the move standard free actions and everything Pathfinder 1 has. You get 3 actions per round.
3 actions. Okay, so that, yeah.
There are things about it I like. There are things about it I don't like. I really like how they handle multi-classing.
Yeah.
So rather than picking like one class per level. You go in and you are a wizard, and you're a wizard, Harry, and you're going to be a wizard for 20 levels. But how they deal with sort of the customization level to level is you choose feats and you choose class feats that'll give you like your core things. So what you can do is multiclassing. Effectively, you take an archetype, which starts giving you the option to replace these class feats as you go.
Gotcha.
So you'll still get like the core aspects of the class, but you'll be able to start adding like fighter stuff or rogue stuff or everything to it that's built around it.
That's definitely a nice like change of pace. I could probably do Pathfinder 2. I didn't play 3.5, and I probably would never have played 3.5 because math is not my strong suit. Like the way I am painfully will say the 5th edition made it very, very dumbed down for people like me. I feel like it's very, very basic, which is also why I like I think you said the City of Mist is D6s. Is it
yeah, I mean, like, I think you roll 2d6 for everything, and you add +1s based upon like story things for it.
Those ones are great too because it's just so easy. Or like D10s, they're like if you roll a 10, you roll that one again if it's a success. Like those systems are pretty nice for me. But the Pathfinder, it always sounds so wild when you play so much 5th edition and then someone's like, yeah, I was rolling against this and I only rolled a 39 and it didn't make it. I'm like, what? It's always like wait, forgot. We're talking about that one. We're talking about that Bizarro system, but
a buddy of ours, we were running Rise of the Rune Lords, and he had this paladin where he would basically do a bunch of stuff and wind up with an AC of like 45.
Yeah.
Where like the enemies only ever really would hit him on a crit.
That's so. I guess it all does kind of scale because that's like the equivalent of like if you have like a 23 AC and in 5th edition, like only unless you have like a troll with like a +12 to hit, like you're not. It's very tough.
I guess Pathfinder picks up what people have referred to as rocket tag, where as things scale, the damage scales.
Right.
So we had a couple of times where like a disintegrate spell hits, and I lost 2 characters that way. Or like a rock giant like crits on the paladin and does like 120 damage.
Right.
So it gets really quick where like you need the initiative boost and everything, and like combat's over quick because you hit so hard.
Yeah, that's the other thing is that from hearing people who play Pathfinder, it sounds like just don't get comfortable with your character because it seems like it's very easy to lose characters in Pathfinder. I've been playing D&D for like 2.5 years now, something like that, and now it's like or 2 years, and I've only lost 1 character in a one shot. I rolled death saves and I lost all my death saves and that was it. And so it's just like to hear people like you and Ken just go like, how was your session? Well, 2 of our characters died, and like it's like on a very repetitive basis. I'm like, wow, it's crazy to me. Do you like that a little more though? Do you like siphoning that out a little bit?
I do. I like there are times where it's frustrating, because like last campaign, my one character, which was a magus, basically wizard fighter type hybrid class.
Okay.
They're one of my favorites. They're really good at burst damage, and he got hit by a disintegrate spell after going ahead of the party, and they just found dust.
Right.
So that was a little like, the same time. So I rolled up a cleric because I wanted to screw with the paladin.
Right.
So I rolled up a cleric, lawful evil cleric, who was a cleric of Asmodeus. I cleared this with the GM, and I made sure it wasn't going to be like too much trouble at the party. So Herald Color, which basically means you get to summon creatures associated with your deity and your alignment, makes that real easy. And a Advocate of Asmodeus, which is basically like a lawyer. So you can use like law and everything to bluff and everything. So the paladin at their highest sense motive would get a 21 if they rolled a 20. My lowest bluff would be like a 33.
So you could
So
just never. Go ahead.
So like you could do stuff, and of course that's going to trigger the paladin being off. But like just talking normally, I wouldn't have to worry about it. And there's a ring called a ring of mind shielding, which basically causes detect evil not to detect. So one of the first things I did meeting the paladin is like, oh, we have an accord that we're going to work together. Because Asmodeus is like all law and all keeping your word. The paladin is all that. So right off the bat, I got something so the party could work together and that we wouldn't be like trying to kill each other. So then basically this sneaky, lawful evil cleric who's working with the paladin, but also screwing with the paladin, and the paladin tries to do stuff that's really good. So that's fun back and forth.
Just like plays it. And so because of your like essential deception, he could never figure out that you were actually evil.
He was getting ideas near the end. When I was like, oh yeah, what's so bad about keeping halfling slaves? And he was playing a halfling paladin. So like those things. The setting in Pathfinder is Galarian, and my cleric was from an area called Cheliax, which is like lawful evil, devil worshippers. They all sold their souls to the devils. They keep slaves and everything. And like the paladins of his order hate Cheliax. So it like clearly I was not a good character.
Right.
But we managed to basically get it so like, okay, we play off each other and everything. We were kind of expecting a sort of showdown after like the campaign ended, like, you know, kill the BBEG.
Right.
Okay, well, we don't have to work together anymore.
Right, the deal's up, yeah.
But my character died like 3 sessions before the end. So I rolled up actually 1 session before the end.
How did they die?
So there's a spell called Destruction, which is like the holy version of Disintegration. And so, my second character that got turned to dust.
Wow. So how'd you finish out? What did you play to finish out that one more day?
Because I go to Maguses a lot, I rolled up a Magus, and because we're like level 17, everything gets crazy at 17, the Magus especially.
Right.
Like I can spend a swift action and basically make my sword Vorpal. So on a natural 20 confirmation, I cut off their heads. Ooh. And I kind of ruined the BBEG with that.
All right. Well, you lost 2 characters, but you got to take the BBEG, which is good.
First round. I like it got to the point I felt bad for the GM.
Wait, the first round you just swept in and chopped off this thing's head?
Yes.
All right, yeah, let's do it. Let's get right into this. Let's.
All right. So I'm gonna try not to get too much away in case people haven't actually played this before. I don't want to ruin the storyline of this.
My 12 listeners probably haven't played it.
Hey, you never know. And it's only been out for 20 years.
Spoiler alert. 20 years? Oh, screw 'em. Yeah.
I'm also not going to use the names because I'm going to screw up the names if I try to.
Sure.
So there's this rune lord that basically is trying to do something bad. So eventually you track down to it and you go to this big room after going through a portal. And there's dragons. There's this guy who's an absolute tank, who's a wizard, but absolute tank. Mm-hmm. So my character had a really high initiative. So I win the initiative roll as we all get in there. My character also had the ability to do dimensional agility, which means I can cast Dimension Door and still act after the fact. So Maguses have this ability called Spell Combat, which basically means you get to do this full round action where you get all of your attacks, which get crazy, and you get to cast a spell. So I come up with the party. We're all centered around each other. There's the enemy. So I go Spell Combat. I cast Dimension Door, and Dimension Door the entire party right behind the BBEG. And now I get like 3 or 4 attacks because Magus at that level and had Boots of Speed. So I do 4 attacks and we roll it. And like the first one was a natural 20.
Right.
And I made sure the sword was Vorpal. So natural 20 confirms on him and just cuts his head off. Like, character doesn't even get to act, just cuts his head off.
Oh my god, I feel
And
so bad for the GM.
Exactly, and I'm like, all right, does he have anything that means we can't do this to him? So we spend like 10 minutes going through all the rules, and it's like, no, you cut his head off.
That's amazing.
We looked at his stat block after the fact, and we're like, no, it's probably a good thing that happened. We would have died if he didn't.
Yeah. Oh my gosh.
Because he's got time stop. So he's got time stop. He's got all these other spells, like reverse gravity and all these other stuff that were like, no, we're fighting over a lava pit.
Yeah.
So hits us with reverse gravity, wind blows us over something, or all this other crazy stuff he's capable of doing. So it went from probably TPK to just he's down first round, and then we're cleaning up the dragons and everything. So
yeah, at that point you're just like, well, that's amazing. We still have a ton of time, but I already know this episode's called Off with His Head. That's for sure. No, yeah, hasn't been used yet, so you get the first. That's fun. See, but that is cool. So like, I definitely could do a Pathfinder 2 one shot. It would, because it just seems like everything's so powerful, and it's like scary, and like everything is so dangerous. It seems like, where like, you know, sometimes, I mean, of course, in any game there can be those moments that are super dangerous and scary, but then there are other ones where it's just like clean sweep, like that though too. I don't know. It's just the fact that you could one shot an end boss like that just seems so unheard of.
So I kind of like, so this was the very first module venture pack that came out when they released Pathfinder.
Mm-hmm.
So like the Magus wasn't out when they released it. So there's a lot of stuff that they built for like the very first core classes that really wasn't taken into account, that like 10 years later they'd released the Magus, who at level 15 can make their sword vorpal as long as it's slashing damage. That
does make sense. And I had one, my friend was decided to DM Horde of the Dragon Queen for the first time. It was his first time DMing. And he said, you're only allowed to use what's in the player's handbook, because that's what was around when this came out. And it does kind of make sense, because like there are some, you know, newer subclasses and all this other stuff. You know, some classes can now take spells that they couldn't before. Like, you know, there's certain things. So it does make sense, but it's still crazy that it's almost crazy that they were able to develop something that could so OP some of those original books. And it's like, all right, well, I wonder if they can make like adjustments to them for like porting like that.
I would imagine at the very least, like, have it where his head can't be cut off. Like,
yeah,
if you were to run Rise of the Rune Lords, just have like the BBEG has something that he can't like be one shotted like that.
Metal collar or something. Yeah,
exactly.
Some sort of legendary resistance where his head must remain on at all times. That's awesome. So as a player, do you tend to go for more of, although that Magus is, I guess, more of a melee, but do you tend to go more wizard spellcaster? Because you said your other one was a cleric. You had your first character kind of die. Is that more your speed?
So I really like wizards.
Yeah.
I forget, maybe 5 years ago, 6 years ago. Ken, if you're in the chat, can you type along how long ago we did that down the river one?
He might be here.
So it was another Pathfinder game that I was starting in an area called the Riverlands, and it's this really chaotic neutral area. So I started GMing it, and we got to a point where we introduced these rules in Pathfinder called Mythic, which are absolutely broken. Like your characters get insanely powerful right off the bat. And we did that, and I was running that with them, and they were doing their thing. And I got to that point where I'm like, I want to take a break from GMing. So basically I talked with Ken, and Ken picked up GMing that campaign with the group of people. So I roll up a character with this, and I play a wizard with mythic rules. It has this mythic path called Archmage. One of the things, I can spend a point in mythic and cast any spell that the wizard's capable of casting at the levels he can cast, regardless if you have it prepared or not.
Okay.
So the wizard spell list is huge.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so now, like, 6 times a day, if I want to, I can cast any wizard spell I want to. Which, as we got more powerful, I started having fun with.
Yeah, that's pretty busted.
Yes. I did a lot of it to screw with the city we were in. There's a spell, Permanent Image. So
that's already so fun.
So the very first thing I did with Permanent Image in the campaign is we took over this bar called the Wise Dragon. Or we called it the Wise Dragon. And so I decided, well, if it's the Wise Dragon, we should have an advertisement for this. So I cast Permanent Image and had a like gargantuan red dragon with eyeglasses because it's wise, and like a mug of beer show up in his hand, just show up in the middle of the city, which prompted a whole outcry from the militia, who freaked out. But it basically became the thing, like the Wise Dragon and a buddy of ours playing this insane gnome would make up random days to try and get people to come to our bar. Like, it's Militia Night of the Wise Dragon, the first drink is half off and everything. So it became this whole running thing of sort of advertising for it. And then like screwing with our competitors to make them look like they win health code and stuff like that. Because Permanent Image at that level especially, you can basically encompass a building. So like make buildings look like brothels, make brothels look like other things, and just completely screw with the fabric of the area around.
That's awesome. That's such a fun spell and like so permanent, I guess, really. But yeah. I picture that like you could like really like roadrunner somebody like with the hole in the mountain, like, oh, it's a tunnel this way, and then just so much fun you can have with that. That's really fun. What other games have you guys been played? Like, have you tried any other classes, or have you mostly just stuck with your wizard? Or wizard or cleric?
So that wizard lived for a long period of time, and not just because mythic characters are incredibly hard to kill. So the wizard was Mock Clay, which I think will give Ken. Well, Ken has great stories about that. Magus is my usual go-to, just because the mix between martial and spellcasting I like.
Yeah, it's great.
No, usually I'll occasionally throw in a class called Slayer, which is a mix between a rogue and a ranger.
Oh, that's a good combination.
And I like it. Like, it's a ranger that gets a reduced sneak attack. And they get a bunch of other stuff. That's one of my favorite classes. I'm playing like an outright martial that I still want to be sneaky with. A buddy of our, Tom's campaign, we're playing Iron Gods with him. I've gone through 3 or 4, maybe 5 characters in this campaign, so I have a rotating cast of different ones that play there. I just had my barbarian die. So I was playing a barbarian in that. That barbarian just got killed off.
Jeez.
I forget what I'm
That's
playing
amazing.
now.
Do you play a little like faster and looser because you know your characters are so expendable at this point?
Maybe not. I mean, if you know the characters are going to die or they have a good chance of dying, you're willing to do just some of the crazier stuff.
Yeah.
So you tend to have fun with it. I've killed off a bunch of Tom's characters in my campaign in the Fall of the Arrived. He plays half-orcs, so we joke that I need to get a 3D printer and just have like a bunch of half-orc skulls on the side of my my desk because of his characters I've killed. But we typically put a fair bit of time in creation and have fun with it.
Okay, that's good. It's so, again, it's like one of the funniest things to me is just how many characters you've lost in like one campaign. It's crazy.
Yes, but like one of the things I guess I don't like about 5, and even 2 he does this more, is the characters are too strong, it feels like. Like, there are times where, like, if your character's already low health, and, like, a giant comes down and hits them with a club, it's kind of lights out.
I
I
mean,
get
yeah.
they want him to be strong, but
I mean, we go unconscious a lot, I guess. I've seen a bunch of my players. I play a bard, but like a swords bard, so he's a little more melee. Actually, mostly more melee. Pretty much the only time I use my spells is to keep everyone else alive. Even though I have other spells, I'll use them for other things. But like, we go down a lot for sure. It just, I don't know. I guess the double the is it work the same way in Pathfinder? If you go over like in fifth edition, say if you have 30 hit points and you go 30 in the negative, you're outright dead, no death saves. If you're just unconscious, you roll your 3 death saves or whatever to see if you stabilize or die. So does it work similar in Pathfinder?
Yes. Not as forgiving.
Right. Okay.
If you go to below your con score in negative, you die.
That's
so like it's like even at like level 20 when you have like 200 hit points, if you get knocked down to negative 16, your character's just dead.
Yeah, that's tough. That's great. Yeah, that makes it way less forgiving, especially at low levels. Because what is it like? Unless you rolled super high for your con score, that's
We typically play the point buy.
point buy.
Yeah, it just makes it easier for everyone like to just create a character without having to worry about the rolls and everything. Because like if the character dies, like okay, fine, we're not going to have to sit down and do the rolls and everything when you're doing this.
Sure.
Makes it a little bit easier.
We kind of do it on the honor system. We don't really do the it shows because like at least for me because I've done point buy and I it is easier. I like rolling because I love having one stat that's just so stupid low. Like if I've had I think 2 characters where I've had either like a -3 or a -2 on charisma, and it's hilarious to me, or just they're super dumb. And on my list of things is to probably tank wisdom at one point in time, but probably for a one shot because that's the worst stat you could ever tank. Probably one of them. Besides con.
I generally feel like my barbarians I tank wisdom, and it's always like, well, once this character gets dominated, it's gonna wipe the party because it hits so hard.
Yeah, I always wonder that because I know like I play with people and they I think I don't run games that much, but like I do see the holes in things and I'm like, all right, so they have a high armor class, so what? I was like, charisma save, take that, like, or wisdom save, it's don't hit them, don't try to hit them, it's not gonna work, that. So yeah, I think it's a tough situation for some, but I guess it also once again it depends on those because lower levels you're not gonna face a goblin with dominate person. It's just not gonna be there. So tough. Do you ever like get snagged up in your games? Like what is your like your style of running games? Do you tend to make things like super tough or do you balance it differently?
I tried to balance. There's been a couple times where I've had to walk back in the middle of an encounter. I'm like, I did not mean for this to be a party wipe.
Yeah.
I'm like, guys, come on, please do something that causes them to want to run away.
Yeah.
I generally try to balance them where they're tough encounters. I'll give them some weak ones. It also depends on what they're facing. If like they've been active in an area, like enemies are more likely to know stuff about them. Like you were saying, if you have insanely high armor class, you're going to try and do something that causes them to get like a reflex save or something.
Yeah, a trap or something. Yeah.
I like the counters on Edge of Disaster. And not all of them, of course, but like building up to it every like couple of sessions. So I try to go with that.
That's cool. Yeah, it did happen. My friend who just started running games, there was just one combat where I think he just like flipped through the back and picked some enemies and put them down. And after like the first round, he like looked down and like, we do it monthly. So we've only played these characters a few times. We bought minis because it's our first like in-game, in-person one. And he just like looked down and he looked up and he just kind of was like, all right, here's the deal. You guys can, he was like, you guys can run and we can continue to play this, or you can all stay here and die. And we were just like, that's what we thought. And then we just did. And like, you know, I don't think he should do that every time, but since it was his like first little bugaboo, he's like, whoopsie. And yeah, it's necessary. And I'm glad he did that because I like my mini and I didn't want to get rid of it yet.
Pathfinder has a bunch of really good resources online where you can search for like challenge rating and everything.
Yeah.
So like, especially when you get used to it, it gets easier, let's go with, to be able to pull an encounter out. Like I'll have a bunch of different windows up on my screen when I'm doing that. But yeah, there are still some times where like this challenge rating shouldn't be a problem, but it's got this one ability which will just completely screw with the party, even though it's not that. What was the character I had to walk back? It was this undead creature that has a gaze attack. And it was like a CR level above, so you know, a harder encounter, but shouldn't be like a white party or anything. Until I looked into it after the fact of how gaze attacks work, where it's not just something it decides I'm going to gaze you. It's everybody within 30 feet needs to make this save.
Oh, it's like a cone, right? Or is it a straight line?
No, it's a 30-foot circle around. Ooh. That if you look at this thing, especially if you look in the eyes, you have to make the save against it.
Right. And
the save was something crazy for what it did. So it's one of those looking at going, oh crap. So I'm like, oh yeah, it's afraid of light, so it's staying back in the woods here and stuff like that. I'm like, yeah, it's not going to charge you. Oops. Right.
That's cool. What other fun? So you've been playing for quite a while. What other fun stories? It doesn't even have to be current campaigns or anything like that. What are some of your favorite moments or things?
So going back to the campaign that Ken was running in Corvosa, this was the Mythic campaign.
Sure.
An 8th level spell wizards get is polymorph any object.
Object?
Yeah.
That's cool.
And any object, and like you can turn a chair into a manticore.
Oh boy. I have one question with that. So, because you have turned a chair into a manticore and it's officially a manticore, does it know to be friendly with you? Okay, that's fun. Okay, it's chaotic. Go ahead.
Oh yeah, this character, Chaotic Neutral, he was a worshiper of the Lantern King, which is like this prankster who's doing prankster Fey Lord, who's doing all these pranks with some larger plan involved, or people at least think there's a larger plan involved. And actually wound up becoming a demigod of the Lantern King. Mythic is crazy.
Yeah, sounds crazy.
So we were we pissed off the Queen. Queen was a BBG in her own right.
Sure.
We pissed her off, and she sends a bunch of her Grey Maidens at us at the bar. And they're like, they surround the bar, come out, surrender, blah, blah, blah. So I'm like, no. And like, this is a bunch of higher level chaotic players already. So we've laid traps in here. We've reinforced this. We've done a bunch of stuff that like, we had extra gold, so why not? So we know they're coming in through the doors. So I turned the doors into mimics.
Nice.
So like, the doors are mimics in this, and the whole time I can just teleport out of here. Like I don't have to be here. So the doors are mimics doing this, like created all these random like iron walls over the place. We're like, yeah, come at us. So there was that. Later on, we eventually go after the Queen, going in the palace, leading a revolution. And as we go through and we're about to go in the main door, I'm like, well, let's make this interesting. So I polymorphed the main doors into owlbears and basically pushed a bunch of owlbears in front of us into this thing.
Oh my gosh.
I think Ken was just like, oh, God
That's such
Like,
a fun spell. Oh my god, I wish if I
yeah.
could take one spell from Pathfinder and put it in 5th edition, I think it'd be that one, polymorph object. That's so funny.
I think my
Man.
favorite. I think my favorite use of that was the king was assassinated. So everyone's like, the king is dead. The king is dead. Oh no! But no one was really sure. Everyone assumed it was because he hasn't been seen. So I'm like, I know what I'm gonna do. I'd been in the city before. I'd seen the king, so I found a donkey, and I polymorphed the donkey into a naked version of the king and just sent him wandering around the city. The king's not dead. And with the way it works and the level I was, I'm pretty sure it was permanent. So there was just this donkey who's all of a sudden the king of the city. So it goes on for a little...
Go ahead.
So it goes on for a little bit, and I think Kent's like... And then an assassin shows up, and the king is now dead again. So the king was just killed in the middle of, like, this town square.
Well, now it's official. The king is dead. Did it like communicate, or did it like donkey noise?
Because it already had a mind, I don't think it could really talk at all. I forget exactly what it can do.
Just running around kicking things.
It was at this point in time. I think it was just mostly confused.
Yeah, just like what is this? That's so funny.
Mm-hmm.
It's amazing. What are your other favorite spells that the wizards get to do in Pathfinder? Because I love these different spells. I know so many of the other spells, but I'm pretty blind to the differentiations in Pathfinder.
Of ways to screw with people, like you can always go like the blaster class of like, okay, you know, like I'm gonna do like disintegrate, I'm gonna do something crazy.
Right.
If you're creative, you can get around a lot of like the saves that these normal blasting things would do, especially if you can prepare. So I think one of my favorite mixes, I don't think I ever got to do this.
Ken actually just said Mythic Baleful Polymorph.
Yeah, that is another one I wanted to do.
All right, so
let me
finish
tell them,
that one, and then we'll do the other. We'll do that one last, and then we'll wrap this up.
So there's a spell, Reverse Gravity, which forces everything up.
That's awesome.
Especially if they're on a flat plane, nothing to grab onto. There's no save.
Yep.
They just get thrown in the air and they can't do anything about it.
That's awesome.
So there's a spell, Time Stop, which gives you extra rounds to act. There's also a spell, Prismatic Wall, which creates a 7-layer wall, which pretty much destroys anything that passes through it. So you cast the wall above everybody.
Oh,
then
God.
you cast Reverse Gravity, and you force them up through the wall.
Oh, that's tricky. Yeah. Wow. I love that. Like, I love setting things up in like weird ways. I do like that, and I think my next character is going to be more martial. I think I'm going to play like a barbarian because I've been doing a lot of casters. But like, one of my favorite classes in 5th edition is the sorcerer, because it's one of the only classes where you can really take these spells and get really weird with them. And like, I like getting weird with spells, like twinning a polymorph or things like that, like being able to do that. So like that, yeah. But then you can also set it up. There's like different ways to like set up different things, and you know, there's ways to do it all over the place. But all right, so what's Mythic Baleful Polymorph?
So this is a higher level mythic. You have to be like a 7th or 8th tier to get to the one that he's talking about.
Okay.
It basically turns you into a fairy tale villain.
Okay.
So Baleful Polymorph usually is, I look at you, I cast Baleful Polymorph, and if you fail the saves, you turn into an animal, and you think you're the animal.
Got it.
So Backlay for a long period of time was turning people into crabs or fireflies. Because Firefly was an emblem of his god. So you're now an emblem of my god floating around the city. What this does is we'll do this to everybody who is 8th level or 10th level. I think 10th level and below, within a 5-mile radius. So you effectively can, at this point in time, snap your fingers and turn an entire city, and basically almost everyone's under level 10, turn an entire city into like woodland creatures.
That's really funny. So just
I never got the opportunity to cast it. I think near the end there, Ken was purposely not giving us that last level of mythic, so he wouldn't have to deal with the fallout of me turning the entire metropolis into creatures.
Even just like you said, 5 miles.
It might be 1 mile, it might be 5 miles.
It doesn't matter. That's
exactly.
like you can walk into a dungeon and turn every villain in that dungeon into, well, okay, under level 10. So you can turn. Ken said my lips are sealed, so you're probably right. I mean, you could turn a lot of smaller things and smaller problems in there. You know, a lot of minions probably. You just, like you were saying, but could be a necromancer protected by a bunch of like regular zombies, and then next thing is like, well, they're chipmunks now, and like.
Yes, but Mockley would have used it more for like, okay, there's a city he doesn't like, or they did something to bother him, so he's just going to go there and screw with their entire economy or something like that. And it's not even holding them for hostage. It's like, haha, prank.
Yeah, it's like, what are you doing about all these cockroaches? What cockroaches? There
you go.
I love that, man. All right. Did you have any other? We have a few minutes, but if you had any other major stories you wanted to bring up, otherwise we can wrap this up.
I got others from our very first campaign, but those are longer, and I'll save them for a different time.
Okay, all right, we could do that. I'd love to have you back on again. I'm starting to make my rounds, bringing back some past guests. Been a little over a year now doing this crazy thing. So I know in the beginning you said you didn't have anything, but if there's anything you would like to plug, now would be the time.
Nothing I can think of.
That's cool. And you're, like you said, you're smart and you stay off social media like a smart person.
For the most part.
For the most part, yeah. I think, I don't know, if you want to, I feel like the one that you can get away with, because like most people don't post on it, a lot of people just go to watch, is like TikTok, because it's just so weird. But like,
yeah, I spend too much time there. I have an Instagram, but mostly it's me taking pictures of like Central Park. But
see, that's cool. That's cool. It's low. It's not offensive. It's not taking any hard stands. Just some pretty pictures of Central Park, and that's the wholesome content we do need. So you're an unsung hero, because most things are just a total dumpster fire. But all right, cool. Well, Gary, thanks for hanging out with me and talking some fun stories. Hopefully, I'll meet you in person through the grapevine. Maybe we'll do a short thing one day. So thanks again for coming on. I'm gonna do some sign offs and then we'll get you out of here. All right, everyone. That was it's been another episode of You Had to Be There. Thanks for hanging out. I see a few of you hanging out in the chat live here on Twitch, where you can watch us if you're listening to the audio, or on YouTube right now. We go live on Twitch. You Had to Be There podcast. Pretty much when I go live is when I have a guest. But you can also catch us on YouTube and pretty much audio versions on any pretty much podcasting site. And if you want to be a guest, you can hit me up on Twitter at @TDecilisComedy, or you can shoot me an email at youhadtobethere@gmail.com. Follow me on Instagram for stand-up comedy dates, and yeah, we'll leave it at that today. All right, thanks everyone. This has been You Had to Be There with Gary Engler. Bye, y'all.